All right, hi. So we're going to talk about how to graph quadratics. Remember, these are the parabolas. And anytime you have the word quadratics, just know that we're talking about there's an x to the second power. It's not linear, it's not straight, it's a parabola, it will curve on a graph, right? So we've talked before about just the a. If the a is greater than 1, that it would actually stretch. This parabola would stretch towards this vertical line. And if the a is between 0 and 1, but is less than 1, it would shrink away from this vertical line. So we talked about just the ax square. The square means it's a quadratic. The a tells you if it's stretching or shrinking. And then we went and talked about this c. And the c is the only constant term. It's just a number. It doesn't have a variable by it. And that c, if it's plus, moves the whole parabola up. So if it's a plus 3, the whole parabola would go up 3. If it was a negative 6, we'd move the whole parabola down 6. Okay, so the c doesn't affect the stretching or shrinking. It only affects the up and down movement of the parabola. And so we've talked about the a. We've talked about the x squared, that it's a parabola. We've talked about the c. Now we're going to do a whole quadratic equation where there's a number here in front of this x, the bx, okay? And how would we graph that, and what would that look like? So in order to do that, though, we're going to start by finding the vertex. Now, I just want to review the definition of a vertex really quick. The vertex is the minimum or maximum point of a parabola. So let me just pull some of these out real quick. So if this was a graph and I had a parabola right here, the vertex would be right here at the very top, the maximum point, which I think is x 1, 2, 3, 4, and y 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be 4 and 6. But likewise, minimum point can also be the vertex. So this concept of a vertex is going to be very useful in graphing a parabola. Okay, so it says the first step though is to graph it is going to be to find the vertex. Okay, now I'm going to show you why in another video. I'm debating this, but it's kind of cool. So I think I'm going to show you why this is true. But for right now, I'm just going to show you how it works, not the why. So the first step in finding the vertex is finding the axis of symmetry. Remember, that's the line that divides a parabola in half, the x value that divides it in half. So we're going to find the axis of symmetry, and this is the part I just want you to trust me on right now, and I'll show you later, that the axis of symmetry is that the x equals a negative b over 2a. It's really cool. I can't wait to show you. But x equals a negative b over 2a. That's your first step. The next step will be, after you find the x value, to substitute whatever number you get here into this equation and find the f of x, or the y value. And then you have an x and y value, you'll have the vertex. Okay, so let's work some of these out and see what it looks like. So again, we'll do step 1. We'll find the axis of symmetry. So here's an equation that kind of came with the textbook. And we're going to use this to find the x value, right? This x equals a negative b over 2a. So we'll use that to find the x value of the vertex and also the axis of symmetry. Same thing. Okay, so as a review, the first coefficient is a, the second coefficient is a b, and the third coefficient is a c. So x equals a negative b, well the b is above the 8, over 2 times a, well which one's the a? It's the 2. Remember, we're only looking at the coefficient, we're only looking at the number. Okay, so x equals a negative 8, and then 2 times 2 is 4. And then 4 goes, you can, there's greatest common factor of 4, so you can divide both of these by 4. So x would equal a negative 2. Okay, so you found the x value of, oh, my wife loves me, if you don't know. You found the x value of, you found the axis of symmetry, and then the x value also of the vertex. It's negative 2, right? But now that we found the x value, we need to substitute it into the equation to find the y value. So we're going to substitute this negative 2 into this equation to find the y value. Let's just do that. I didn't give myself a lot of room, did I? Let's block this off so we don't get confused. Okay, so we have 2x squared plus 8x minus 1. But I'm going to write 2 instead of an x. I'm going to look to here and see that the x is actually a negative 2. Squared minus 8, but instead of an x, I'm going to put in, guessed it, negative 2. Minus 1. And that's going to equal our f of x, our y, if you like. Okay, so f of x, let me write that a little neater, equals, now we have to do the order of operations, so a negative 2 squared would be a 4. Would be a 4, but then we're multiplying that 4 by this 2. So 4 times 2 would be 8. Okay. And then a negative times a negative here would be a positive 16 minus 1. So it would be 24 minus 1, or f of x would equal 23. Whoops. So there you go. We found our axis of symmetry by finding the x value and then substituting it in and finding the y value. Oh, I see a mistake. I wrote down the question wrong. This should not be a minus. I did it right, but this should not be a minus 8. This should have been a plus 8. Plus 8. So a positive times a negative would have been, uh-oh. Let me just redo that from this point on. The calculations are right. I just wrote the question down wrong. Let's do it again. F of x wasn't feeling right. Equals 2 times a negative 2 squared. And then 8 times a negative 2. Well, let's just try it. Plus 8 times negative 2 minus 1. Okay, so we still get the same answer on this side, which would be an 8. But this side would be an, instead of plus 16 would be minus 16 minus 1. So the answer would be negative 9. So the answer to this, going back, once you find the x value, we find the y value, and then we have it. We have the vertex. So the answer to this would be the x is a negative 2, and the y would be a negative 9. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Let's do one more here. So what's the first step? We'll do number 2 here. What's the first thing we need to do? The first step is find the axis of symmetry, which is x equals a negative b over 2a. So x equals a negative b over 2a. Okay, let's substitute it in and see what we get. Excuse me. So remember that this is the a, the number here, the coefficient. This is the b, and this is the c. So x equals negative b would be a 6 over 2 times the a would be an invisible 1. So the x would equal a negative 6, and 2 times 1 is just 2. And 2 is the greatest common factor, so you can simplify this. 2 goes into 6 3 times. It goes into itself 1 time. So x equals a negative 3. Okay, we found the x, but now we need to find what the y would be. Right? Because the vertex is going to have an x and a y. So we found the x. We know the x is a negative 3. Oh, what's the y? Okay, well, let's substitute this into this equation and find out. So we have in this case, it's a g of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. But we're going to write g of, instead of an x, everywhere there was an x, we will now write a negative 3. Because that is the x value of the vertex. Okay, so g of x equals negative 3 plus 6 times, instead of an x again, the negative 3, right? Negative 3 plus 5. And then we just work it out, okay? It's just order of operations, so. Oh, I forgot to put the x squared, didn't I? Let me just write that. G of negative 3 equals negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 5. Okay. G of negative 3 equals a negative 3 squared. You do the order of operations, which is exponents before you add or multiply. So we get 9 plus 6 times negative 3 plus 5. Again, we should multiply before we add. So g of negative 3 equals 9 plus negative 18. 6 times 3 is 18 plus 5. And then when we get to this, we should always do the one more to the left first when we're adding or subtracting. If you don't know which one of these to add or subtract first, do the one more to the left first. So 9 take away 18 would be a negative 9 plus 5. So g, we're running out of room here, of negative 3 equals negative 4. So the going back, we said that the x of the vertex was negative 3, and we found the y, or the g of x this time, is a negative 4. Good. Okay, I would like you guys to try one. So let me give you one to write on real quick. Let's just do this. See what happens if, and I'll give you an easy one. F of x equals 3x squared minus 2x. I'm not going to even give you a c. Let's see what you do when there's no c there. Okay, so the c is like 0. All right, give it a shot. See what you get.